welcome to another Tonic Craft Kit unboxing video. Today's one is for kit number 62, which is called Wildflower and Florals, and it has a beautiful minty greeny kind of colour scheme with purples in as well. I'm going to apologise straight away. I don't know if they sent me the wrong colour of textured Craft Perfect purple card or whether the list that I've got is wrong, but I've used amethyst purple, I think, which is what I was sent, but the list says aubergine purple, so the Texture Craft Perfect purple card that you see in my samples in this video might not be the right one. I'll show you both when I come to showing you the Craft Perfect papers, but I'm not sure which one it is that you're getting. The list says the aubergine, but I got sent the, I think it's amethyst, the colour of that one, so I'm not sure which one you're getting, but I thought I'd better say that at the beginning just in case you've seen some of my samples and it's using a different colour of purple cardstock. So let's get on with the unboxing of the video. So inside this month's kit, first of all, before we even empty the Nuvo, we have got a full packet with a piece of washi tape attached, a full packet of ivory white card blanks and envelopes in a 5x7 size. Now the dies in this kit will matte and layer really nicely onto a 5x7 size of card, so if you're not usually into your 5x7 sizes, you've got these ready to give you a go with the actual dies in the set. Or if you're like me and you like to make smaller cards, you can easily trim these down into smaller cards as well, maybe even do them into even smaller cards and do them like 3.5 inch by 5 inch as an even smaller little size of like a note card, and you could do a little set of them and maybe make your own envelopes or buy some separate envelopes to go with them and fit them. So there's loads of ways of using your card blanks, but also the card blanks are actually made out of Tonic's smooth 300 GSM cardstock, so it works really nicely for you to just use for different techniques, maybe for some die cutting, whatever you kind of want to use it for. If you don't want to use their card blanks, maybe you really love the ones that you already use, you can definitely utilise bits and pieces of these, or they make a great gift for another crafty friend as well. Like my mum really loves them, so she's probably going to get this packet from me. So yeah, they're great for just passing on to somebody else if they're not your cup of tea as well. So that's the first thing that's in this month's kit. Oh, and you get 10 cards and 10 envelopes in there. Then let's look at the Nuvo bundle. So first of all, in this bundle we have got a Nuvo Light Mist spray bottle. So you've actually got a full-sized spray bottle that's going to be perfect for working with your shimmer powder and your embellishment mousse that are in this kit. And when you get your spray bottle, if you wonder why it doesn't spray, it's because Nuvo ones have this lock system on them. So you just twist this piece here, this little bit of plastic, and it will slide down into the slot that's there, and then that will allow you to spray your bottle. But the reason why they have this piece is so you can put that in your bag and travel with it, and it's not going to spray anywhere. So if you wanted to use this for something else other than crafting, you would have that knowledge that it's not going to get activated in like your suitcase or your handbag or something if you wanted to take something with you somewhere. So they're great spray bottles, these ones. I know I tend to go for this one at the moment because it's just like on my desk all of the time. I do have my Nuvo ones, they're just slightly out of reach at the moment, but I do really love their Nuvo bottles. If you look back through all of my sped up videos and stuff, I was always using these ones before I got that black one. So they are fantastic spray bottles, and if you already have spray bottles for other bits and pieces, you could use this one for a bit of experimentation as well, or you could dedicate a spray bottle to distilled water, and then if you have any products that need a little bit of a refresh, you can spray into them rather than having to like drip water or try and controlledly pour it out of a giant distilled water kind of container as well. So there's loads of different ways that you can make use of another spray bottle, and you might not have even tried Nuvo's ones before, and you can give them a go because they're really lovely with the trigger system. It might be better for you if you have arthritis or any problems with your hand, doing the little trigger action rather than spraying from a small little nozzle. If you have a smaller kind of spray bottle, might be good for you as well. So a fantastic spray bottle, and if you like these after you've had your kit, you can buy them in packs of 2 as well, so if you did want to get more of them. Then the rest are all gorgeous full-size products as well. So firstly, let's go with the shimmer powder. So we've got a full-sized shimmer powder which is called Falling Leaves. I think this came out with the Woodland Walk colour trend, if I'm remembering correctly, but a beautiful green, this one. It's a really lovely yellowy green, and if you like watching my tutorial videos, the tutorial for this one, I was using the mousse, but I decided to experiment and mix the mousse and the shimmer powder together, and I'll show you some of the results later on in this video. But if you want to see like the actual moment of me mixing them together and realising they actually can work as two colours together, then check out my tutorial video that should be up on my channel like the day after this one. But if you go over to Tonic's website, you should be able to find it the same day this one is posted as well. But yeah, that is the shimmer powder. I have done videos on the shimmer powders before. I think I did a full up-close video when the first colours came out. This one, Falling Leaves, is actually a mixture of colours. A few of their original colours are like just a solid colour with the mica powder in, but this has actually got a mixture of colours. You can see on the labels they've got flecks of different greens and blues, tiny little bit of red in there as well, so you can really make some cool fun effects with these, and I will show you some samples of that later. My new favourite thing at the moment to do with these kind of things is to add some water to your cardstock, so either spraying through a stencil, just doing a spray of water, using a wet paintbrush and drawing like a big brush stroke or a blob in the middle, and then tapping on your powder and then leaving it to do whatever it wants to and for the water to dry. Then when you come back to it, you can dust off any of the excess powder that hasn't come into contact with some water, and then you're left with this really cool unique kind of effect where you've got that splattery kind of look, or like the little particles of it. I'll show you some samples later, but it looks fantastic. So hopefully you'll kind of enjoy those sort of ideas as well as a different way of using this. But there's so many ways of using your shimmer powders. You can just use them like mica powders as well if you want to. Stamp with your clear sticky ink and then use them on top of that too. Then we're also getting a full-sized Nuvo embellishment mousse, and this one is the Lilac Lavender, which I think came out in the Sweet Sorbet colour trend. I think it was this one that came out in that colour trend, but it's a beautiful colour, this one. And again, if you want to see me mixing together the purple mousse and the green shimmer powder, then check out my tutorial video, because you'll be surprised by the results, probably as I was too. So we've got beautiful, and this is a normal embellishment mousse, so you can use this for all sorts of different techniques. I wouldn't recommend heating it, not like applying lots of heat. I mean, I reckon if you were doing like one of my squishy backgrounds, like I showed in my first tutorial video, if you used mousse in that kind of a background, I reckon you could sort of dry that like wafting it with a heat gun. But I wouldn't recommend like applying direct heat to it like you would with an expanding mousse. But yeah, you can do so much with it. You can splatter with it, watercolour with it, scrape it through a stencil. If you look at the tutorial video, I show you how to use it onto embossed cardstock, and how to do a grouting technique, which is Sue Wilson's technique, onto the debossed side of cardstock as well. So loads of ways of using it, and a fantastic colour as well. I really like this colour, and it goes really nicely with that minty green kind of colour as well. Then we also have a full-sized Nuvo crystal drop, and this one is in Buttermilk. So this is one of the original kind of colours, and some of my samples that I have done, you might be thinking, you've used quite a bit of drop there. You know, I don't want to waste my ones, but I was thinking, using Buttermilk, this could be one that you already have in your stash, or you might have a similar colour, like, you know, that's quite a light colour that could be adapted to adding in the shimmer powder and stuff to do some of the techniques that I've showed on my samples. And I thought this could be one that you might have a duplicate of, so you could keep your new one from the kit and experiment with the old one that you might already have in your stash, and do some cool ideas with it. Because I actually used these two together to create like a green drop, but I spread it through a die cut, or over a die cut, onto a non-porous surface, onto my Easy Clean mat, and then once it was dry, I could lift the die cut up and the colour stayed in those gaps. It has sort of like broken up a little bit, but I quite like the effect of it, and I'll show you that on a sample later as well. But you can definitely combine these two and just use this with a spatula for a different kind of technique as well, if you're you know, getting bored of just using them as Nuvo drops. There's so many different ways of using up your Nuvo drops as well. Then the final full-sized item is a spool of aubergine purple ribbon, and it's an option, so it'll be either or. You'll either get the 9mm or you'll get the 3mm. So they do two different widths in their beautiful double satin ribbon, and it's this beautiful dark purple, which goes really nicely with the aubergine cardstock, which I presume is the one you're supposed to get in the kit, but we'll show that later on. But you'll either get the 9mm or the 3mm, and both of them work really nicely for different ideas on your cards. I've used the 9mm on a couple of different cards, and you can definitely tie gorgeous tiny little bows with the 3mm one as well, and you could even do the same things that I've done with the 9mm with the 3mm too. So beautiful ribbon, and you'll be getting one of those in either or of the width of that. So let's go to the cardstock next, and I'll move the box out of the way. So you will actually be getting 2 sheets of each of the cardstock. So instead of just giving you like 10 different sheets, we've actually got 5 different sheets, but 2 of each of them, which is nice because it means that you don't feel so precious about cutting into your cardstock. Now, I got sent this selection of colours, but the list says it's this selection of colours. So I think this one actually goes better. So I'm presuming the list is the correct selection of colours here. So I will eliminate that one, which is what I've used on my samples and in my tutorial, but just imagine that it's the aubergine colour if you've been watching the tutorial and everything. So these are the 5 colours, and you'll be getting 2 full A4 sheets of each of them. We have 3 textured Craft Perfects, which have that beautiful linen texture on one side of them, and then they're smooth on the other side. And we've got Sea Salt, which is my new favourite one that I'm always forgetting the name of and calling it Sea Foam. We've got Cream, and then we've got Aubergine Purple as well. So I really like these colours together. They kind of look like an alternative Neapolitan ice cream. Like this could be vanilla, mint choc chip and like raspberry ripple or something. It kind of reminded me of that sort of thing. But I really like those colours together. And then the last 2 colours or types of cardstock that we're getting are 2 of the more specialty kind of cardstocks. We've got the double-sided pearlescent cardstock in Blue Frost, which goes really nicely with that sea salt green colour. Even though this is more of like slightly more of a blue colour, it goes really nicely with that green. And then the final piece is one of their satin mirror cards, and this one is Soft Amethyst. So really, really beautiful selection of colours in this collection. And you're getting 2 sheets of each of them, so you don't have to be worried about using up a lot of the cardstock. The die set is quite large, like the main panel of the die set, so you might be thinking, I don't want to use up a whole half a sheet when I've only got 1 of each sheet in the kit, but you'll have 2 of each sheet, so you know, you don't have to feel so precious about using a whole half of a sheet to cut out the panels. So that is all of the cardstock. So now we've got all of the dies and stamps for this month's kit. So you might notice here, you actually have more than an A5 sheet's worth of stamps. We actually have extra like freebie kind of stamps in this set. So you've got your usual A5 kind of portion of stamps here, which I've put onto a magnetic sheet. But then we also have like an extra almost A6 size set of dies as well. And this little bit here is classed as the freebie for this month's kit. So this actually says, if blank were flowers, I'd pick you. So it's a really gorgeous little sentiment here that has this oval that you can swap out, and you can swap it out for the word friends, mothers and sisters as well. And you also have a separate little scalloped oval there too that you can use as a solid colour to back behind this, or that it just allows you to leave this as a solid piece and stick that over the top of this as well. And I've used a couple of the extra sentiments and the whole thing on a couple of samples as well, so you'll see that actually cut out and be able to legibly read it the right way around and everything. Then we also have this die, which I think this is why they've given you extra freebie dies in this, so that they could do this separately. But this piece is actually the edge piece, so you can use this to cut the edge of this floral panel, or you can use it to cut the edge of this beautiful geometric patterned panel here. But you can just die cut the both of these together and have it as a solid piece, or you can use this to cut either or of them and do like a frame or have a raised piece in it as well. So I really like that they've given that to us separately, and they've done it separately, because they could have just given us a die that fitted in this position between those two dies, but if they had, it probably would have been a much flimsier die that might have misshapen over time, and it might not have been the perfect kind of shape to match with both of these designs, because you can use them both individually. You might think this looks a little bit odd, but in my tutorial video I do a debossing technique with this die, and I actually think that random edge kind of makes it look like it's a pattern behind like a torn aperture or something. So I really like that. And if you didn't like whatever you've done to a background that you might have like debossed this onto, you've got this edge, so you could cut this into your main panel and have a little border to go back around the edge and neaten up everything as well. So I think this is a really nice versatile extra edge to have that is going to fit that absolutely perfectly. It really does fit that nicely. When I was cutting them out, it's a really nice fit to the edge of that. And then this is the main panel. So this is a 5x7 card blank that we're getting, and this panel fits on there absolutely perfectly. So if you love your 5x7 cards, this kit is perfect for you, because you have 10 card blanks already and you have this pattern panel. And if you like your quick and easy cards, you have 10 sheets of cardstock and you have 10 card blanks. You can do one colour as an intricate, one colour behind, and completely get 10 cards out straight away just with using the cardstock and the card blanks in here as well. So if you like doing that kind of thing with your kits, you've got everything ready to do that as well. But this die is beautiful. It has got piercing detail on the top and bottom, but not on the sides, so it makes it really unusual and different. And actually this die is it is literally just like 1/16 less than 7 inches and 1/16 less than 5 inches, so it really is that perfect 5x7 matte layer. But you could, if you wanted to, cut this, score it down the middle and make little notelets. If you didn't want to cut your card blanks into little notelets but you liked that idea, this would actually make the perfect card blank template for a small little notelet that's about roughly 5 by 3.5 inches. So you could definitely do that with this die as well. Just use your scoreboard to score it in half. And then you have the beautiful decorative detail that cuts either just into your card, however you want to use it, or you can cut it with that outside edge and get it in the perfect rectangular shape as well. And you can definitely cut it into the rectangle and then use this die to cut out the centre of that as well. Oh, I need it the right way around. You could cut out the centre of that too and create a frame element or something as well. So lots of different variations that you can do, having that extra edge sort of die as well. But this is beautiful, this panel. I actually turned this into a stencil, and I've done that on one of the cards that I'll show you as well. But it's got all sorts of different flowers in there. There's like tiny little pointy ones, there's sort of more like daisy type flowers with lovely open curvy petals. There's a little bit of foliage in there as well. There's like a black-eyed Susan up there too, so all sorts of different foliage going around that frame. And there's nothing to stop you cutting this twice, flipping it up the other way and using it on an 8x8 card, or even bigger if you wanted to. But if you know this size is, it's probably like 7 and just over 6.5 inches, just over 6.5 inches that way. So definitely like maybe a 7x7 square or an 8x8 square would look really nice, and you could just you know, carefully sort of overlap these pieces or snip bits and pieces off so they meet up nicely to make a lovely frame as well. But yeah, I think this is a really gorgeous design. But you also have that versatility that you can put this design in the centre of it, and this design looks so different depending how you look at it. Sometimes I see cubes, and then other times I almost see like flowers. And I was saying in my tutorial video, it looked a bit Christmassy to me as well. It looked a little bit snowflakey too. So it's a really nice versatile design. And to get this beautiful pattern, but to make it strong enough for you, they've actually left around the edges a larger bit of metal, and there aren't any pokey holes in that larger bit of metal to get all of the bits and pieces out of the die. So I left a few in so that I can give you a tip. So Oh, did I only leave 2 in? Oh no, I left some in around here as well. But if you take your pokey tool, your craft pick, and you just push from this side, you can easily poke those little bits out. So if you ever have trouble with that, whether it's this die or another die that you have, and it doesn't have like a little release hole, that you can poke through from the other side to get rid of those pieces, you can literally just go through like this, or you can give it a good tap and they'll probably all fall out as well. So there's different ways of doing it. Or if you don't like poking at things, or you think you might stab yourself with your pokey tool, take a little bit of washi tape or sellotape, and you can often press that in like really hard into that position and pull it off and get the little bits and pieces out as well. So that's another kind of tip for getting those pieces out. But it's literally just round the edge so that this is a really nice strong die. That's not going to bend or go anywhere really. Whereas if it was the pattern right up to the edge and hardly any metal, it would be a lot harder for it to stay intact and in the perfect positions and everything and not get damaged over time. So really beautiful die, and I love this random edge. If you want to see exactly how what sandwich I use in a die cutting machine to deboss this in, definitely go and check out the tutorial, because I think it looks so lovely debossed, because it makes this area look embossed, if that makes any sense, because this like pushes into the card, but then the detail comes up, but the outside also looks raised as well, so it gives that sort of optical illusion almost that you've got like an extra piece around the edge of it. I really love the look of that debossed into the panel. Then we also have a few extra dies as well. So we've got a few different flowers that I'm sure a lot of you are fantastic at making your flowers, and you can do all of the shaping and like inking the edge of the petals and all sorts of different ideas with building your flowers. Or they're quite nice shapes just to do a really simple flower where you just shape the petals on one side and then poke the middle down on the other side, and it looks fantastic as well. And you've got your buttermilk Nuvo drops to do a centre on them too. And then we also have this little set of nested ovals, which is a different oval to the oval that is in here, because this oval works perfectly with the stamp set as well. And then you do also have this little circle tag too, which you could use with the little heart that's in the stamp set if you wanted to, or you can just do it with your decorative papers. You could even use this as a little tag to stick a flower onto and have a little flower on a tag dangling off your card as well. But I will show you how the stamps coordinate with that oval die. So you kind of got two versions of the oval. You can either use the tiny little scalloped oval, it's really tiny scallops on that one, or you can use like the sort of tag but with two loopholes on it. And you can kind of pick and choose whichever ones you want. Obviously if you use the oval, the scalloped oval, it's going to be closer to your design, whereas if you use the one with the two loops, it's going to be a bit further away. But there's tons of these different designs that will work really, really nicely, and you can even combine some of the stamps together. You can put the birthday wishes inside this little one if you want to as well. So I'll go through what all of the sentiments say too, but I just wanted to show how they coordinate with those dies. But the sentiments that we have are a mixture. There's just the one that is portrait, the rest are landscape, but you do also have these smaller ones as well, which you could stamp inside this decorative one too. So we've got sending love and kisses, you are in my thoughts, sending butterfly kisses, which this die set doesn't have any butterflies in, so I have brought in a butterfly to use that sentiment with, but I'm sure all of us have butterflies in our stash. I don't think there's any crafter that wouldn't have a single butterfly stamp or stencil or die, so we could definitely make use of that with anything else from our stash. We've got and birthday wishes, so I think the idea is that you can combine this, sending butterfly kisses and birthday wishes, but you could mask off that ampersand and just have birthday wishes as well. There's nothing to say you have to use that. Then you've got thanks for being you, and you've also got on this special day, and then you have this one that you can combine with this if you wanted a little element to colour, or you also have best friend, just for you, I miss you, and thank you as well. And then you've got a little heart too. Hearts are always useful for adding into backgrounds, or for just adding a extra touch of colour that you feel like needs to be balanced across your card as well. So I'll put all of these bits away, and then I'll come back and show you the samples that I've done, and then the extra experiments that I have done after figuring something out in the tutorial video as well. Okay, so this is my little pile of samples, and I've got a few extra bits off to the side as well. But this first finished one, they're all my smaller size of card because I just prefer making them that size. This first one, I put the pearlescent card as the background, then I took the sea salt green, and I actually cut this pattern into it twice and overlapped it. So this is a full panel. It almost completely goes full to the edges. I did go round and snip off the edges because there was a little bit of solid green up here where it doesn't quite go to the edges, but it almost does. And I just really love that pattern. I think in this green, I'm actually seeing the cube design more. You can kind of see like the top face of a cube and then the side face and the other side face. I'm kind of seeing the cube more when it's in this design. Isn't it funny how you can see different patterns in different places that you use it? Then I cut the beautiful flower piece, the entire piece, so this did actually go off in this direction up round the corner, from the pearlescent cardstock again. Then I used the edge die on it to cut the edge out, and then I also used the edge die by itself to cut out some of the 150 GSM vintage white vellum that Tonic do as well. And then I layered the two of them together, and I made this panel come off the end here, and then I actually took the rest of what was left, snipped off the top of the flower there, and then put glue along this tiny edge piece here, stuck it to the other piece of the frame, and then snipped underneath it, so you can't see any of this piece coming underneath here. It just looks like a seamless sort of border, and I thought that worked really nicely, and I really like the mint on mint kind of look for this one. And then as I was sticking this down, I put a torn piece of the sea salt green, and I put it over the top here and then underneath over there to make it look a little bit different as well. And then for the sentiment, I used the tiny little "Just for you," and I stamped it 3 times and added that to the centre of the card, and I thought that looked really nice and like a classy, elegant kind of card, really sort of simple but with those beautiful floral designs. So that's the first one. Then this one, I should show you this first. So I've been experimenting recently with trying to make my own stencils, and what the best thing is, you know, with die cuts I mean, but what the best thing is to cut them out of. Like, should you cut them out of just normal card and just use them a couple of times, or should you cut them out of like a thin mylar? Should you try with acetate? Or this version was you put 2 sheets of cardstock inside a laminating pouch, and then you cut off the edges, and then you have 2 sheets of cardstock that have just laminated on one side. So this is matte on the back, the actual cardstock, and then it has got a laminating sheet on the front of it. And this works quite nicely. I don't know if this die was slightly too intricate to do with this, but it works nicely to make a stencil. However, it did splodge underneath using a mousse, because I think because I die cut it, it doesn't lie flat to the surface. So maybe if you were going to use mousse with a stencil like this, you might want to use a repositionable adhesive on the back of it, or I think just with ink blending brushes it would work really nicely. If I've got a scrap of card, oh I do, I've got this scrap of card here, and hopefully this blending brush has still got some ink on it. I think this would work really nicely as a method for making stencils to just ink through, because you're actually applying pressure around the area whilst you're inking. So yeah, it does work really, really nicely for an inking stencil. So you can give that a try, or I reckon getting wide clear packing tape and putting that across a piece of card before you die cut it. And this was a lighter weight card. It's a recycled white card that I use when I want a slightly thinner weight of cardstock. I'm not sure on the GSM, maybe like 250 maybe, but yeah, I think that's a really nice sort of way of making a stencil. Whether you do the laminating pouch idea or whether you do like sellotape idea, it works really nicely for some ink blending. I didn't actually do that on any of my samples, but it would have worked really well for that. But what I did do was I used the mousse through it that we're getting in the kit, and I did a whole piece. I had an A5 piece of card underneath this. I spread the mousse through the entire thing, and it went a little bit blobby in areas, but I still managed to use all of the pieces. And these were the 2 cards that I created using those 3D sort of stenciled pieces. And the way I tried to kind of camouflage the sort of smushy effect, you know, when paste and stuff goes under the stencil. See, this is very smushy here, but from a distance you can't really tell that much, because I tried to camouflage it by using an Aquaflow. So this is the Indigo Dawn Aquaflow. I think it was in one of the original collections of Aquaflows, and I just did like watercolour all over the background. And then this one, this piece, this was the middle piece of that A5 sheet that I cut into an actual card front size, and these were the two edge pieces that came off of it. And so this one I was just going to keep the mousse with the watercolour coming up the top, and I've just added like water and watered it out towards the top as well, so it faded up and got lighter. But I thought, why don't I do that kind of technique that I used to always do when I would make a stencil from a die cut? I would stencil through it, and then it wouldn't matter if it got blobby because I would put another die cut over the top of it. So that's what I did for this one. So I actually took the border piece and that main geometric pattern and cut them both together. Then I ripped this top edge of the geometric pattern. I put vellum, which I had also cut with this border die so it didn't interfere underneath here, because this mousse is on the background piece, but the white piece is stuck over the top. So the vellum only wanted to be around this more solid white piece here. So I used the edge die to cut the vellum edge. Then I stuck the white one on top of the vellum, and then I stuck the white die cut over the top of the whole background and recessed it back into the mousse areas. And actually the Aquaflow over the mousse has given the mousse slightly more of a bluey purple. I suppose it was quite a... No, it has given it more of a bluey purple, yeah. It was more of like a pastel purple, but adding that Aquaflow over the top's given it slightly more of a bluey pastel kind of look. But I really like how that one turned out in the end. I thought that was going to have to be something that I would throw away, and I'd just try and make use of the two side pieces. But I do really like how that one turned out, and I used the ribbon on this one as well. Just a couple of strips of the 9mm ribbon, which is what I got in my kit. But you could definitely have used like maybe 3 strips of the 3mm ribbon. You might have some really narrow red liner tape to stick that down with, because I just used a 6mm strip underneath each of these pieces. So you might need like a 2mm, if they even make that, to put the 3mm wide ribbon down. And then for the sentiment, this is kind of like a tip here as well. I die cut my little scalloped ovals first, and then I tried to stamp Sending Love and Kisses on top. The one I got perfectly positioned, the stamping didn't stamp well, and the one that the stamp stamped well, it was off centre of my oval, obviously. So I just cut round the one that was the perfect stamping and then just stuck it over the top of the other one. So I still had the scalloped oval, but I had the sentiment on top in the perfect position as well. So that's a little cheats way of getting around it. You just fussy cut around the stamping. But that's that one. And then this was the other one. So this backing piece here is the intricate pattern, and then I just ripped around the edges to make it look like a random sort of meshy design, as if it is some kind of like mesh or netting off of something that you've used in the background. And then the same thing I did with these two. It's the stenciled mousse, and then I watercoloured over the top. These were just in 2 long strips because that's how the A5 piece of card was. These sort of carried on from the 2 edges, and then I just ripped the top and bottom because they weren't quite long enough to reach the top and bottom of the card. So I ripped the top and bottom and did opposite, so one comes from the top, one comes from the bottom. I put a little bit of that vellum around the centre, and then I used my Dymo labeler to do my sentiment on this one, and I just did birthday wishes. I felt like the Dymo went with the more sort of like edgy style of this, you know, with the ripped mesh in the background and stuff. I thought that would work really nicely. Then before I move on to showing you what that actual die cut looks like, when this was covered in mousse, one of the great things about doing this for the stencils with something slick on the top of it, you can spray this with water and get extra impressions off of it. Whereas if you'd made this out of cardstock, yes, you could use the cardstock one with all of the mousse on there, but you wouldn't be able to take a print from it because it would kind of want to stay on the actual cardstock one rather than transfer. But because that is a slick plasticky surface, you can take a print off of it as well, like you would with a normal stencil. You take like the negative kind of print off of it. So you can actually do that as well. And where the mousse was thicker, thicker, you've got like thicker texture in there too. So I really like the effect of that. And then to finish this card off really simply, I took that "if friends were flowers, I'd pick you," that you can change the friends for mothers and sisters, and I've done that in the centre. I've cut it from the satin mirror card, shadowed it with the cream Craft Perfect, and then put a vellum bubble behind it because you have the bubble that goes with it as well. Then for the oval behind the word friends, I actually took the cream cardstock, but I spread thinly with my finger the buttermilk Nuvo drop over the top, so it gives it a shiny glossy finish, because I wanted to do that so that the buttermilk Nuvo drops in the centres of the flowers would work perfectly. And then to match this kind of mousse and the cardstock colour, I actually looked through my Nuvo drop stash and found Sugar Plum, which is a glitter Nuvo drop, and I thought that worked quite nicely with the colours of it as well. But you could go for a gloss drop or a dream drop perhaps, whatever kind of colour that you have that would work with all of the colours that you've chosen, just to make it look a little bit different. You definitely could have just done the buttermilk one in the centre there as well, but I thought because these are kind of like opposites, I wanted to swap them around. So that was that really simple card that was literally just using the waste to create the background. Then this is my shimmer powder idea. I don't know if anybody else has ever done it, but I thought it would be a really cool kind of way of using your shimmer powders. And doesn't that look fantastic that in some areas where my wet brush strokes were heavier with water, had more puddling, and I'd sprinkled the powder in, you've got the true green colour of the falling leaves. But in the other areas where there was maybe less water on my brush as I did the swoosh across it, you've actually got that speckled effect of where the powder has just kind of like gone onto the surface and stayed there rather than spreading out, and I really love that effect. So if you didn't hear earlier, how I do this is you can actually spray through a stencil as well and do it, but how I do this is, for this one, took a wet brush, I use one of the Nuvo brushes, like a flat one, a wide flat one, drenched that in water, and then literally just go like this and keep dipping it back in the water to make sure there's enough, and just blindly draw with water on your piece of card. Then you take your shimmer powder, you tap it all over the top of it, and then you just leave it. So don't touch it at all, don't spray it with water or anything, you just leave it to dry as it is. Then once it is dry, you can come back along with a soft brush and carefully brush off the rest of the shimmer powder that didn't touch any of the wet areas, and then you'll be left with this beautiful result. And you can do it with through a stencil. Spraying water through a stencil works really well as well. I was doing that first for something else, and then I thought to do this for this one. And then this one is the background, the other one for this card. This is the other side of the sheet. I did an A5 sheet, and this is the other side. I presume that should match up. I'm pretty sure I did it all as one sheet. Oh yeah, it matches up like that. Okay, so that is how this piece was as it was drying. And then this one, this is something different here. So this was what I was saying about if you already have a buttermilk Nuvo drop in your stash, the buttermilk colour or something similar is quite nice to colour with something else because it's such a light colour, it can easily be overtaken with something. So because we have that falling leaves shimmer powder, I actually squeezed a lot of the, well, not too much, maybe like 20-25 drops worth of the Nuvo drop onto my easy clean mat, tapped in some of the green shimmer powder as much as I wanted, mixing it in to get the colour I want. Then I literally just spread it into a circular design, you know, something that I knew would fit nicely as a focal point on my card. Then I was just going to leave it there, and you can see that beautiful sort of shiny effect that is in the background. But then you can also see there's like a lattice design over the top of it, because I knew that the lattice that I put over the top would take up the shimmer powder colour, but I wanted to see what it would look like. So I took the buttermilk in the bottle and I went back and forwards like this, doing the drizzles over the top, similar to one of the tutorials I showed you with the wiggly Nuvo drops background, or the squiggly Nuvo drops. But as it dried, the buttermilk took up some of the colour but not so much of the mica, so it's kind of given like a translucent green lattice across a pearly green lattice, which I thought looked really interesting, and a really different way of using your Nuvo drops as well. So I thought that was a really cool way of using it. And then these flowers here was when I was playing with the shimmer powder, just the shimmer powder by itself, I had also watercoloured a piece of cardstock, and then I had cut this out once it was dry. This is the whole border piece, but I just chose little pieces that had sort of full flowers that I could hide a tiny bit behind the sentiment, and then I just snipped them out and used them as little elements there. And then I've done the same thing that I was explaining on the other card with the stamped sentiment. I've just trimmed one of them out and stuck it on top of one of the scalloped ovals as well to give my little sentiment. So that's that one. Then, because I was playing with this kind of idea with like the water brush strokes, and then I was playing with mixing the Nuvo drops with the shimmer powders together, decided to have a play by spreading some Nuvo drop onto a background. So I added lots up here, similar to the Nuvo drop swipe with the acrylic paint and the Nuvo drops that I showed in my second tutorial video, but I swiped just the buttermilk down the card, so you can see more down this end how it's kind of like patchy where there's some buttermilk and there's some not. And then while it was still wet, I sprinkled in the Nuvo shimmer powder, and then I let it dry and then knocked off any of the excess like I did with the previous background idea. But again, it gives a completely different look because it hasn't bled at all like it would with water, but it still gives that like speckled effect. It almost like freezes it in time, like when the shimmer powder touches it. Because this is like more of a viscous kind of substance, it doesn't like spread out like it would in water, because water's like such a flowy sort of substance. It will just sort of disperse out into it. But because this is more like some kind of gel sort of consistency, I think it just like stays on the top in that speckly sort of effect. And I thought it looked really cool. And then this piece is the same bit that I had used these flowers from. So I had cut this piece, and this was the leftovers that I cut the rest of the flowers from, but I've got that round the border. I also shadowed this with the cream cardstock, the Cream Texture Craft Perfect. It's got a slight, not really a shadow, I suppose I just stacked them on top of each other to give it a little bit more depth. And then this is the butterfly I was telling you about. So when I was doing this, when I had mixed up the Nuvo drop with the Nuvo shimmer powder, I had a little bit left over, and I wanted to bring in a butterfly. So this is actually from the Ambassador box from years ago. It had a butterfly that could sit on top of the box. This is actually that butterfly, and I snipped off the bottom piece that has like the foliage that attaches it to the box. But I took a die cut, and then I took what was left of that Nuvo Mousse shimmer powder mixture, and I spread it over the top, so it filled in the little cavities in the butterfly. Some areas I should have let it dry longer before peeling it up, because some of the areas like stuck onto the mat, and some of them have just started cracking over time. But I really like the look of that. It kind of gives it like a slightly tatty butterfly kind of a look. So I was really pleased with how that turned out in the end. And then for the body of the butterfly, I had originally cut another butterfly, snipped the wings off so I just had the body, and I had put some of the buttermilk Nuvo drop over the top, but it was too light. It needed something darker, especially with the black stamping that I had done. So once the Nuvo drop was dry, I just took my black alcohol pen from the Nuvo range and just drew over the top of it, and then I've got a glossy bodied butterfly, and then it mirrors in with the black of the stamping and everything as well. So that's that one. Then this one is the one that I was showing how to create that kind of background in the tutorial video. So really simple, debossing the die into a white piece of cardstock, and I show you exactly how to do that in the tutorial, and then using the mousse to accent the pattern on there, and also watering it down to splatter it in the background. I've just added a diagonal strip of the ribbon, and then I've used the word mothers and then teamed it up with a couple of Dymo sentiments, but they could definitely be die cuts from your stash as well if you have the words happy and day. Maybe you have happy and birthday, you can just cut the word day off the word birthday and use that with it as well. So there's that card, and then this was the two backgrounds that I was showing how to create in the tutorial video. So this is onto the embossed side. This top portion was showing how you can do it with a ink blending tool, and this portion was showing how to apply it with your finger, and then this one was the grouting technique, and over the top of the debossed side rather than the embossed side, it's the debossed side. But if you wanted to go lighter handed, you can also do a really light effect over the debossed side as well, rather than grouting in the entire pattern. So those are all of my samples, but as I was playing with the tutorial, or in the tutorial video, I also discovered some other bits and pieces as well. So after I'd done this background, I still had some of my mousse on my mat, and I had been curious about, I wonder what colour you would get if you mix the purple mousse with the green shimmer powder, but I hadn't been brave enough to do it for any of my cards, and I was like, well, this is kind of like the perfect opportunity, having a bit of mousse left over, and those of you at home might not want to waste your mousse if you don't know if it's going to turn out nice. So I decided to mix the green shimmer powder in with the mousse, and we did these little swatches. So this is just the mousse, just like that, the gorgeous purple mousse. Then, oops, this is the purple mousse with a tiny bit of green, so it kind of goes a little bit more grey kind of looking. Then this is with a little bit more green, it goes even more sort of grey looking. It does have more of a hint of green in real life, but it goes even more of like a grey looking colour, more like cement or something. And then if you add even more shimmer powder, it does turn green. Isn't that so cool? I was not expecting to be able to get green from a purple mousse, but it works so well. So that's what I showed in the tutorial video, and we were sort of discovering that together. And then obviously I had to try and create an ombre piece of card that went from purple to green. So this was using the ink blending tool, and this is purple at the top and then adding a little bit of green and keep adding more green until I got to the green colour. So it's kind of blinding with the sheen on the mousse, but look at that cool effect that you get. Isn't that just so lovely and so different, like really muted kind of colours? But I really like that. I think it looks fantastic, and if you did one of the die cuts out of white over the top of this, it would look really beautiful as well. So that is taking your purple mousse, adding slightly more green each time, and actually turning it into a green mousse in the end. So once I'd done that, I still had a lot of green mousse left over, so I took the ink blending tool, and this is some of the pearlescent card from the kit, and I just did little circles and splatters, so that gives a really cool effect as well. And in that instance, it looks really green, because I reckon because it's got the bluey green colour underneath, so it really shows off the green mica in it. But this one, I don't know if you can see on camera, it really does have purple mica as well as green mica in it. It's hard to show, and this was spreading it over the background with the mini ink blending tool and then watering it down a bit more and splatting over the top, and I quite like that subtle effect. In some angles it looks really splattery, and then in other angles it almost gets hidden, so I really like that effect. But this was the sort of majority of the green kind of colour, but you can see that sort of purple undertone in there as well. And then I had more left on my mat, and I was like, well, I don't want to waste this, so I sprayed some more water on it, and I dipped the 5x7 card blank into it, and look at the cool effect you get here. It's green in the background, but where it was more concentrated, the purple comes through. It looks like one of those cool cars that you see it in one light and it looks green, and then you see it in another light and it looks purple. It's so cool. I really love how that turned out, and I would never have thought to do that if I hadn't have been filming a tutorial video and then had a bit of mousse left over and decided to actually try mixing purple and green together. Because if you think of the colour theory, the complementary colour to purple is yellow, and it's a very yellow green, so you would expect to just get a grey tone, which is what we got, but if you keep adding, it actually turned to green, which is amazing. And I really love how this turned out. Look at the sheen on that and the way it catches the light. It really looks like trees, actually, the way it's done that veining kind of effect. But I really love that. I think this was almost my favourite piece, the piece that was just the leftovers left on my mat and I just dipped it in. But I really, really like that. I think this, like, cropped down to a size would look fantastic on a card. So, yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this unboxing video for Tonic Craft Kit number 62, which is Wildflowers and Florals. So hopefully you enjoyed it. I'm hoping you got enough inspiration and hopefully some different ways of using things that you might not have tried before, and like how to make your own stencil, and, you know, like cutting into bits and pieces, adding die cuts back over the top of something where you've made your own stencil and it's gone a bit smushy, or trying to hide it with some watercolour inks and stuff as well. Maybe the different Nuvo drop ideas too. I didn't realise quite how many ideas I'd kind of thrown into this. I think I was in a very experimental mood when I started playing with this kit. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this unboxing video. Don't forget to check out my tutorial if you want to see how to add your mousse to embossed or debossed cardstock, and how to emboss or deboss that die into your card as well. And if you want to get hold of this month's kit, there will be affiliate links in the description box below the video and on my blog post as well. You can buy the kits as one-off purchases, you can buy them as a monthly subscription, or you can also buy them as a quarterly subscription, which works really nicely as a present for somebody, so that you get like 3 consecutive kits in a row. But I'm pretty sure you can say if you don't want one, and you can like skip that month as well and carry on after that. But yeah, really hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next one. Bye!